good day, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar. So I'm Rob Carrillo, the Communications Co-Lead at the OSCARS project and Senior Project Manager at Trust IT Services. Now, for all of you that are coming back after joining us on our previous webinars and the first open call, welcome back. We're certainly thrilled to see such a great turnout today. And for those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to meet you all as well. So for this webinar, we will first hear from the OSCARS project coordinator, Giovanni Lamanna. He's the CNRS Laboratory Director. And we have the project manager of OSCARS, Friederike Schmidt-Tremmel from Trust IT, senior analyst, who will give us details about the second open call. We will then hear from the 5 funded projects from the first OSCARS open call, so the actual projects that we have funded, and we will introduce them later. Finally, we have an open Q&A with the audience with some of the science cluster panelists. So just to get you familiarized with the engagement mechanisms in this webinar, we have a Q&A portion where we are collecting all the questions via Slido. Now, I recommend that you keep your questions, or you type in your questions at least after the presentations are made, just in case some of your questions are answered in later slides. So we will share with you the Slido, as you can see in the screen, but you'll also see that a little bit later. Okay, then just a note as well, let us please keep the chat only for discussions and exchanges. If you really have a question, do put it in Slido, because that's where we will concentrate, and that's where we will look at when we're answering or picking questions to answer. Also, this webinar is recorded, and this will be published as soon as we have processed and uploaded the recording. Normally, we aim to publish the recordings within 24 hours. So now with that, I think we can start. So for this second open call for open science projects and services, I'd like to call on Giovanni so that he can bring in his presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Rob, for introducing me. I want just to add that I'm also the director of the ESCAPE collaboration. ESCAPE is a cluster of research infrastructure in the domain of particle physics, nuclear physics, and astrophysics. And I have the honor of coordinating on behalf of the 5 science clusters the OSCARS project. So I believe I have to say next for slides, okay? Who is running the slides? Okay. So the very first information before starting the introduction of the OSCARS project and the call, I warn all of you that today is the day that we are dedicating to the launch of the second cascading grant process, but not really the day when we do open up the call for a submission of your potential proposals. The reason is that we are still missing some feedback from the legal offices of the European Commission about refining or fine-tuning, let's say, the eligibility criteria for this second call. And anyhow, without such a feedback, the call cannot be open. I hope that we are going to have this in a very few weeks from now. Anyway, I would like to also to underline that you receive the information about the date of the opening in our website, but the information about the opening of the call will be obviously also made available into the dedicated official European Commission portal. Next slide, please. For today, I don't see the number, but we are between 200 and 300 connected colleagues. Today, we have re-registered 900 participants, coming from about 600 institutions. We have about 90% of attendance coming from institutions that are behind the science clusters, We will come back on these aspects. And 15% only applied already in the first call. Therefore, we have new applicants at the percentage of 85. And that's also a figure that says, and we are also happy for that, about the popularity and your interest. And we are delighted to learn about your interest in our actions. Next slide, please. Let me say something about the OSCARS project. It's a 4-year Horizon Europe project aiming at fostering the uptake of the open science in Europe through 2 actions. One is the consolidation of the activities, the achievements of the ENVRI domain-based clusters, and through the cascading grant, also supporting the open science and the fair data services development and deployment. The project is a total funding of 25 million euros. We have a general assembly based on the participation of a limited number of beneficiaries, 2 to 3 per each science cluster, because as you figure out and as you will see, most of the funding is dedicated to all of you, to the scientific communities interested in participating in the Cascading Grant open calls. Among the, let's say, major objectives also for the consolidation part, we have a remit of defining community-based competence centers based on the cooperative actions of the clusters, and as well as deploying services that have a high level of composability for allowing researchers to have access to fair data and perform analysis. And of course, this is done in parallel by mentoring as well the open science project services, as we said, and as we are going to say many times, through the cascading grant mechanism. Next slide, please. We felt also relevant to share with all of you some background elements. The science clusters, the concept of science cluster was proposed for the benefit of the open science data intensive research in 2019. We started with the H2020 grants with the mission of raise the productivity of researchers and to lead to new science innovation by sharing visions, by sharing practices for the fairness of data. These clusters were supported at the time where European Open Science Cloud was a policy and concept. Therefore, in parallel, we had the evolution from one side of the EOSC project with all the shareholders. At the same time, in parallel, the clusters completed their H2020 projects and established a work program for the future. Meanwhile, during these last 5 years, we have been working together by also editing some position statement based on our original views concerning open science in Europe, about the long-term expectations and commitments in open science. At a certain point of our H2020 grants, we were also involved in one more project, EOSC Future, led by the 5 major pan-European e-infrastructures. We had a small contribution, but extremely impactful, because we proposed during this experience and within this project to support some pilot open research test projects. Was really the beginning of the conception of supporting researchers in performing open science project or developing open science services. That is now the matter of the calls and the matter of the discussion today. We were also able to foster the domain-based EOSC change services for RI, integrating them also with the EOSC core functionalities. We said that in parallel things evolved. Both situations evolved. From one side, today, after 5 years, EOSC is going to enter in the build-up phase of the EOSC Federation. Some core services are deployed right now by the EOSC Central EU node. And from our side, the clusters have developed a long-term perspective by putting in place collaborations through collaboration agreements, MOU, and we are engaged in going towards the next steps of our work program, particularly at present with a series of projects in Horizon Europe. Two of them, the major ones, are OSCARS and ENVRI. From OSCARS, I already said, ENVRI is a complementary project which focuses mostly on the acknowledgement of the importance of the software achievements, raising the awareness of the foundation approach, because we look forward to prepare the creation of a virtual institute for research software. We want to deploy fair and quality standards for code deposition and code sustainability, and we also promote careers and skills of engineers and researchers that are deeply involved in software. And then the other two items in this slide are referring to the virtual research environment that are going to include software, and that are part of the objectives and the deliverables of OSCARS. And furthermore, we want to, of course, consolidate our services through new also goals in open research. Next, please. And then the third document that we produce, all of them are available through the links that are proposed in this slide. The third and more recent document of last year is a document related to the position and the vision of the clusters for a long-term commitment in the operational phase of EOSC. It's a matter of fact that we are also in the discussion today with the EOSC Association, the EOSC, the European Commission, the board, the ESFRI board, about the implementation of the federation and how to figure out to having a thematic node potentially into the pan-European landscape in order to support open science. Next slide. Yeah, so we come to the goal of the today meeting. Let me just remind, first of all, the terms of the open call for cascading grants. After the starting, the T0, the starting time, the official opening of the call, you are going to have 60 days to submit your proposals. We do expect then the project will start after the summer, towards the end of this year. Rules are to be respected and considered concerning budget. The request should be between a minimum of 100 to a maximum of 250,000 euro per project and per organization. And the duration, the projects should last a minimum 1, maximum 2 years. The goal is to build, as we said, on the science cluster approach to ensure the uptake of the European Open Science Cloud. The target are all the communities, research infrastructure, universities, institutes, SMEs, large companies, consortia, as well as individual researchers. For your knowledge, just really a brief overview on that. The evaluation criteria, the criteria that independent on the project, on the management, independent researchers are appointed to evaluate your proposals, all the proposals that we receive. They look at the project description, they look at the scientific impacts, the digital resources that are considered in the project, and then the level of clearness of the implementation and the realism that has been adopted when the budget is described and investment is justified. Next, please. So we said that the cascading grant mechanisms should probably contribute largely to bring EOSC as the data space for science research and innovation in Europe, together with other thematic or other applied data spaces. And we want to enhance the participation of researchers at pan-European level, but even beyond on the open science. The total budget out of the 25 million that is dedicated to the cascading grants is the one that you see here, is 16 million. The calls about the OSCAR open calls can use also the link that is proposed here. Please take note of the different links because allows us to provide you with all the complement information. I think I said yes, open science projects and services are expected. We are coming back on these points many times in the slides. So next one, please. Yes, so I have the pleasure here to focus on some figures that are related to the first call. Immediately, you see the big number that are almost at the center of the slide that says to you that indeed we invested already 80% of the total allocated budget. Therefore, you can figure out immediately that the number of projects, although we do expect an important pressure, the number of projects that we are going to be funded proportionally is limited to the remaining 20% of the budget. Anyhow, the first open call, you see also some numbers are related to, they were related also to scientific research projects, citizen science projects, other type of projects or networking. We had a series of selected then project that make metadata software tools and workflow fair and available to fellow researchers with the aim of addressing the need in terms of work to be done of the community to then make the research environment, the data, the software, and the metadata fair enough to then start up the clear social open science and expecting to then lead to scientific impact through the paradigm of the open research. Numbers, you see that we had 264 proposals submitted. 14% of the 42 countries represented were outside the European Union. And we have more than 600 organizations participating to the call. And you see that highly ranked in terms of popularity are the university, the research technology organization, but we have different type. Again, you have more information through the link that is proposed in this slide. Next one, please. Same figures, but for the selected project. Selected in the sense that projects that were highly ranked by the external review and they were invited to sign contracts for start the project, therefore they were funded. 58. 48 projects have opted for the full 24 months duration. 50 projects will receive a contribution of more than 200,000 euros. You can browse all the projects funded via the first OSCARS open call through the link under here. And I encourage you to do that if not yet done, because indeed you have really summary. You can browse it by domain. You have the summary of projects. You have reference to the PIs and co-PIs, the institute. So you have a sort of chance to get the flavor of what is already funded. And then why not be inspired for your proposal? You see that the success rate at the end, because of the fact that we dedicated also 80% of budget was 22%. More or less the figures are proportionally pro rata the same that we have for the application. Happy to say that we have 38 out of the 58 projects from the domains of the Fine Science class. And then please, I repeat and invite all of you, this is not dedicated exclusively to the science classes, but the 5 science classes represent more or less 5 domains. So the 38 projects were covering these domains that together already covered a large part of the research fields. But then we have 17 cross-cluster and 3 that were behind the domains of the science clusters. Next, please. Now, in a few slides, we want to share with you some further messages. So in some cases, we repeat ourselves. The aim of the call is to support researchers that have to engage in or that have to develop the open data research by conducting science projects that facilitate and foster sharing research data and results based on fair principles. Proposals that develop and or make available services or tools that can be software, hardware, middleware, protocol, standards, benchmarks, documentation and training, mentoring materials, activities and resources, which enable open research in a field and encourage open science practice based on fair principles are also eligible. Next, please. So this is one of the tables that you will see also in the application form, just to underline that all domains can be considered and any type of projects that are in the context of the openness of research are also potentially considered. Next. Further considerations. We said many times, also because it was the goal of the original proposals through which OSCARS were funded, the goal is to support open science projects or open science services. Those are research activities that exploit or foster the adoption of fair data, strengthen fair competencies, practices, and technologies. They are expected to leverage and or exploit the science cluster services aimed at demonstrating and piloting the use of EOSC resources. They can be cross-research infrastructures or cross-domain, as well as projects with high societal relevance. In the case of cross-RI or cross-domain project, please, we do underline and we emphasize this should be reflected in the composition of the consortium. These projects can be proposed over a large spectrum of scientific domains that includes the industrial sectors. Therefore, they can be submitted by organizations, researchers behind the current group of research infrastructures that are partners into the clusters actions. Emerging research infrastructures. You know that you can figure out that are emerging in the sense that are facing the involvement in open science, in EOSC, or that are recently or are going to be in the 2026, hopefully part of the updated LSRI roadmap. They can involve engagement with academic groups and industry, university association, learned society, citizen scientists, and the long tail of science. Next, please. So the principal investigators of these activities have to commit to the fair management of the achieved scientific results and all associated digital objects. This means that we do also consider to mentoring, to monitoring, and to expect a sort of integration as far as the project will progress in their program, to be involved with the OSCARS work packages, with the CASES working group, to really a large community approach and a large and coherent integration. A particular attention will be reserved for relevant data sets from research infrastructures, the innovative software, the services for interoperability and legacy of data, all these ingredients, as we can say, that are needed for the uptake of open research. And for the second call, we especially welcome applications that make use of existing fair data objects or services from one domain or multiple domains to address a specific, let me also add, can be risky, can be really innovative scientific questions or innovation program in the expectation of producing new scientific results by the end of the project. We want really to leverage the scientific outcome of your future projects by the end of the OSCARS project that will be part of the legacy also of the science classes in the build-up phase of the EOSC Federation. Projects must deposit the digital research data generated in the science clusters trusted catalogs or other trusted repository federated in the EOSC. Please keep in mind synthetically the fact that everything you will produce should be reproduced. The projects should aim at enhancing the involvement of researchers in open science, the reproducibility of your results, and the fact that made available everything from the publication to all digital objects in a fair way to reproduce and even participate in the next steps after your results. That's really the paradigm. Next, please. I believe that I leave now the floor to our project manager, Friederike Schmidt-Tremmel.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Thank you, Giovanni. I can take over from here. So I would like to say gives you some information about the funding and the conditions. So the first one is who can receive financial support. Giovanni already mentioned it's open to research infrastructures, university institutes, SMEs, large companies, citizen science groups, whatever. And it can be consortia or individual researchers. We need a legal entity, obviously, to sign a contract and transfer a budget. So it can't be just a person, one student, one PhD student or so. So there need to be an institution behind. Third parties receiving the financial support are in our case not subject to the rules on eligibility for funding provided in Horizon Europe. Usually, that means, in other words, so we are not restricted to member states and associated countries. So the call is really open internationally. But obviously, so the funding rules apply as for every other funding in Horizon Europe. The type of contribution is, so the minimum, Giovanni already said, is 100,000, maximum is 250,000, and a duration from 12 to 24 months. And the minimum is really a minimum. So we are not going to accept proposals with less funding or less time. The simple reason is that we think it's adequate to address these topics with that amount of funding. And it's simply a management decision as well, because it means if we are ending up with tons of very, very small projects, it's a lot of additional overhead on the administrative side. So and the same applies to the time frame. Please be aware, so the maximum funding OSCARS can give per organization is 250,000, and that means total, so received in the frame of both calls. The background to that one is simply the regulations in the model grant agreement from the Commission, which says that in the case of providing funding to third parties, the maximum per organization is restricted to the amount set out in the call text, and in our case, that's 250,000. So if you have already got funding, the full amount in the first call, you can't receive another funding in the second call. And if you have been partner in different projects, you will need to make sure that you are not exceeding the total. The eligible costs, as I said, so that really is the usual Horizon Europe role, and you can find all the information about eligible costs and whatever in the model grant agreement. Put the link in the slides. Next slide, please. So what does the process look like? So we are using Trust IT's grants platform. It's quite a easy setup, so you don't need a PIC number or whatever, or this what you usually need for EC funding. The whole form is roughly 10 pages maximum. Language is English. The structure is you have to put in proposal title, acronym, open science, data fairness challenge, and domain. The composition of your consortium, or if it's just one partner, then obviously it's just the one partner. The duration and financial support. So there's a finance table in where you need to fill in, but it's very, very low weight. So it's really just personal costs, other costs, overhead. The overhead, you can use the 25% flat rate, which is usually in EC funding, but you can also put in something different in case your organization is calculating that usually differently. So that's up to you. We are not going to add automatically the flat rate to the total, so it's really your responsibility to include that. And then the main part of the proposal is summary, project description, scientific impact, digital resources, and project implementation, and the final deliverables. So that's another point. So we are not asking for a lot of deliverables or milestones or work packages. You really are just supposed to describe what you want to do, how to do it, and if it's a consortium, who is taking over what. So that it's helpful for the evaluators to get an idea, are the knowledge, expertise needed actually in the consortium. So getting feeling, are you able to achieve what you are setting up to achieve? The only formal delivers we are asking for, and that's really just at the end of the project, is one final project summary in PDF, a presentation, and a scientific journal or journal type article. The presentation, we will provide a template, and the presentation is going to be set out in a big final meeting we are going to organize at the end of OSCARS, where all the funded projects should be and present their results. What we are asking as well is, and I think it's for the benefit of both sides. So we are going to be in contact during the duration of the project, in regular contact. That is a two-way thing. So you can ask for mentoring or for help, and we want to see where you are going to get an idea. How does it fit in to what the clusters are doing? How can we help? How does it fit in the whole EOSC landscape? Yeah. So expect us being in contact. So we are not going to have you starting and then leaving you alone for the next 2 years. Yeah. Next slide. So some words to the evaluation criteria, but I'm not going to read them all out. They are public, so you can have a look at them on our webpage in the call information. And it might help you writing your proposal if you are just looking at the questions, because that's what the evaluators are going to use. So if you are answering the questions in your proposal, it obviously makes the job for the evaluators far easier, and you are getting more points. So it's leaning on the forepart of the proposal, obviously, and none of these criteria are set out in the text. You can see which are weighted more or less. Yeah. So just a word for the OSCARS grants platform. The platform is accessible via the OSCARS homepage. There is a login button on the OSCARS homepage. You can sign up there, and then you are getting access to the grants platform. The second open call obviously is not yet open, so you can already sign up, but you're not going to be able to see the call just now. It will be the moment the call is officially published. There is a presentation from the last launch event. You can have a look into that one. There are some details in how the forms are looking like and so on. And there's also a video tutorial on our YouTube channel, on the OSCARS channel. Please have a look and see if there are any more questions. You can also check the FAQs on the Open Call website. That should hopefully answer most of the questions, but there are contact details as well on the website. So in case you have questions around the grants platform or management or so, there's a list of contacts you can contact via email. And I think that brings me to the end, and I'm handing over to Rob. We are now going to present 6 of the projects we have funded in the first round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Friederike and Giovanni. So now, indeed, we will hear from the funded projects. Projects from FP7 to H2020 and now Horizon Europe, mostly related to computing, data science, and data management. He received his PhD in Science and Technology from the University of Cantabria in 2017, and his research work has been developed in the field of data science, specifically focusing on its connection with advanced computing technologies and related to diverse disciplines like ecology, biodiversity, or remote sensing. So now we can go into this presentation. Fernando, are you with us? Yes.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for the introduction.
You may begin.
So let's start. I'm going to present our funded project Goyas, which means Geospatial Open Science Jardim Applications, Innovative and Fair Remote Sensing Data. I am the principal investigator, and this is a consortium from different institutes from the Spanish National Research Council, mostly related to environmental sciences. Next slide, please. So the idea of Goyas is to establish a fair data system to manage the full life cycle of experimental or discontinuous remote sensing products. There are already available different initiatives to publish data and data products derived from remote sensing in bigger initiatives like Copernicus, for example, but the process to add new data products to those big initiatives is complex, and in general, they need to be worldly. It means cover all the whole globe in order to be on that platforms. And our approach is different because we are producing new data more locally or more dedicated to a specific place, and using new experimental methods like those using artificial intelligence, for example. And this is for the moment not be included on, for example, Copernicus. From the beginning, we have identified 4 data products. For example, one related to monitor water quality in continental water masses like lakes or reservoirs. We have also different products on oceanographic, for example, those related to ocean color that allow us to understand better the quality of the water in coast. For example, this is made for different algorithms in the occidental coast of the Mediterranean Sea. We have also important spots like Doyana National Park. The National Park is a significant biodiversity hotspot, and it includes a variety of ecosystems like wetlands, forests, dunes, etc. And it's a very good place for monitor the climate change. So it's like a natural laboratory where we can study different impacts on climate change. And also, all using artificial intelligence, we have satellite-derived bathymetry. So the expected impact is to fill critical gaps in the accessibility and reusability of remote sensing data and make it in a fair by design manner. It means that since we are deploying a new environment, we will take into account the FAIR principles in order to create this whole system. Next slide, please. And also what we want to do is a kind of pipeline or workflow where automatically it will produce this new data using our developed algorithms. So once a new event is detected, like for example, a new image taken by the satellite, it will run a trigger. We will automatically generate the product. We attach the metadata, and we will produce the data in a specific format, taking into account the FAIR principles in order to improve the interoperability and reusability of the data. It will also ensure the fairness of the data with different automatic tests, and it will be published on our repository. Our idea is to create also a kind of demonstrator based on Jupyter in order to facilitate the usage of the data product that we are creating, and in order to link to the ENVRI hub. Next slide, please. So the challenge that we are addressing is to create this system in a fair by design manner. So the data will be accompanied by adequate metadata and documentation to use these FAIR principles along the life cycle. We will provide an alternative channel for experimental and great added value products that can be used by different types of stakeholders like academia, administrations, industry, and with a special focus in research initiatives or infrastructures like ENVRI or LTR. And we will use this kind of system for create a kind of virtual data distribution center. We are starting with these 4 data products, but we are taking into consideration new ones. And if anyone is interested in incorporate that kind of data products, we will welcome it, and we will appreciate any initiative you are working on. And next slide. And that's it. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have the escape-related project, the GASPS project. So we like to call on Ian MacDonald. He received his PhD from Keele University in 2009 and has spent the last 15 years researching stars and their dust at the University of Manchester's Jodrell Bank Centre for Astrophysics, where he's now a research fellow. He's also an active pro-am in the field of genetic genealogy. So, Ian, are you here with us?
I'm here, thank you. So this is our project, the Gaia All-Sky Parameters for Stars service. There's 4 of us working on this service. There's 2 of us at the University of Manchester, myself and actually my boss, Albert Zielstra. And at the ACRI ST Institute in the south of France, we have our collaborators, Nick Cox and Geronimo Bernard-Salas, who are managing the technical aspect of our project. Next slide, please. Thank you. The context of this project is that space is complicated. We look at stars at different wavelengths, but it can be hard to understand these stars from the images that we get alone. I've got a portion of the sky here, and it's the same portion of the sky observed by 4 different telescopes at 4 different wavelengths. And we can see that these images do not look anything like each other. Some stars appear in some images, some don't. What we can do is we can graph the brightnesses of these stars against the wavelength and make plots like the one on the right-hand side of the screen. And if we sort through this data and remove any points we classify as bad data, then we can see a relationship between the wavelength and the brightness of the stars. And next slide, please. And we can fit these with a model in order to get the properties of the stars. So we can use computational models to pull out data like the radius of the star and the luminosity of the star or the temperature of the star. And we can see in this case that we have a very bright star with a large radius, but it's cooler than the sun. It's only at about 3,000 degrees. What we can also do is measure the infrared flux excess. So if we have an infrared excess of flux, then we know that there is material going around that star. It might be gas, or it might be dust, or it might be small rocks. So in this way, we can look at how stars are interacting with the space that's around them. Next slide, please. This brings us to the GASP service. So we have been given almost the full €250,000 by OSCARS for a project that's lasting 2 years, started last month, within the escape field. And the four of us are trying to address this challenge of looking at the fundamental properties of stars and trying to understand from these stars the history and the evolution of the Milky Way galaxy and indeed other galaxies around us. What we will deliver from this project is a catalogue and brightnesses of essentially all the stars in the sky that we can reach. The Gaia satellite that actually finishes its observations today after 10.5 years of observing, and it's recorded the brightnesses of 1.5 billion stars and the distances to many of them. And we hope that at least 10% of these we can get temperatures and brightnesses for accurately. We hope a lot more. And we're also going to detect any material around these stars. We're going to provide a web interface to visualize this information, and we're going to publish all the code and visualization tools that we use in this analysis as part of our commitment to fair data. Next slide, please. So this project works because we've had a previously funded EU project that's called Explore, which has allowed us to build technology demonstrators for this software. So we have this software which we're calling the Python Stellar Spectral Energy Distribution Package, or PIST for short. And what this does is it takes data from a web service with which users can interact, and they can upload a set of stars or a region of the sky, and the PIST software will go away and query interfaces at the Astronomical Virtual Institute of the Virtual Observatory. And that returned data will then be analyzed by the PIST software to produce a set of stellar parameters. This is already in place before our GASPS project begins. Next slide, please. What we're doing in GASPS is we're actually updating this to be more fair. So we are updating the web service to interact with other virtual observatory web services and tools. So users can use other tools to generate a list of stars or a set of criteria in the sky. That can be fed back into this PIST software. And it can also take material from other virtual observatory databases, which are onboarded in the OSCARS project. And we are using that information to generate stellar parameters that can be output in a way that can be then fed back into those virtual observatory tools. So we are upgrading this web service. We are adding new services to this software package. We're adding new databases as inputs, and we're using new tools as outputs. We're trying to apply this to all the Gaia stars across the sky, all these this 1.5 billion stars. Next slide, please. So in summary, what we have is a science goal, which is to understand the stars in the Milky Way galaxy and the dust around them. We have a community project, which is to provide a catalogue of the temperatures and brightnesses of the stars around us, which users can query and look at stars of their own interest. We have a community service, which is a web interface to explore this data, this very multidimensional data set that we're going to generate, so that users can explore it and look at the properties of the stars in which they're interested. We're going to release all the code from this project, which is going to include the data that we produce, but also the code behind it, and placed on permanent public repositories. so that after the project ends, new users can come and either take their own data or take the data that we've generated and provide bespoke reanalysis of whichever stars they're interested in, whether it's stars that we've already looked at or new stars from their own project. And finally, we're going to interface better with the community. So we're going to enhance our code to become more compatible with the other services that already exist in the Worldwide Virtual Observatory by conforming to the standards that have been generated for virtual observatory code. Next slide, please. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian. Next, we'll hear from a PaNOSC-related project that has been funded, MTESX. So this is being presented by Oliver Knodel. He is an experienced data scientist with a demonstrated history of working in the research industry. He is skilled in data science, FPGA prototyping, and big data. He's a postdoc and PI at the Helmholtz Center in Dresden-Rosendorf. He is a strong engineering professional with a doctorate in engineering focused in computer science from the Technical University of Dresden. Oliver, you may begin your presentation.
Yes, so thank you for the short introduction. And yes, I'm from the HZTR in Dresden, and I'm co-PI. Our main PI is Carol Goebel from the University of Manchester. Together with the Universities of Limerick, we are working with Limerick and Tartu. We are working on the project MTESX, Scaling Training Portal Federation for Research Institutes or Universities throughout multi-tenancy and exchange. Next slide, please. Our OSCARS project MTESX aims to build on top of the Elixir test platform to address the fragmentation of training resources across institutes, scientific domains, websites, portals, and so on. Our challenge is to support research institutes and EUST projects which have limited access to training catalogs or only outdated lists of training materials on their websites. Furthermore, a cross-catalog exchange is often discussed, but often not established in practice, and the fragmentation of resources prevents the reuse of valuable training materials and limits dissemination. On the left side, we have the project details. This is an ambitious project for which we have requested 250,000 euros in total, distributed equally between HZTR and University of Manchester. Now we have 2 years. Everything started in October last year. And the challenge, but also opportunity, is especially that we are from 2 completely different research fields, from the life science and from the proton and neutron world. The result of our project is hopefully useful for every science field and science cluster. As part of the project, we will be offering in a first step regular requirement workshops to collect input from our stakeholders. One of this took place last Monday, a workshop. This will help us to ensure that we develop a product that is accepted by our communities and beyond. After that, we will develop a prototype for multiple spaces or views to make it easier to onboard new communities without own catalogs into our shared catalog resources. We will then establish methods for reusing materials from the existing test catalogs to break down barriers between research fields. After that, the onboarding of further communities is planned during the end of the project. The impact is, in the end, hopefully, that MTESX will significantly enhance the findability, accessibility, and reuse of high-quality training resources, improve sustainability of training portals by reducing operational overhead and duplication, and enabling resource sharing across the different portals. Next slide, please. Here we see the current situation. The original test catalog on the left side for the life science community and our PAN training catalog for the photon and neutron world on the right side. Both are based on the same test code, but they are completely independent of each other. And after certain modifications, they look completely different. And there are many more of these catalogs based on the test source code. Next slide, please. Here's our solution. This is now the difficult slide, always difficult to explain. as already described, our project will take two essential aspects into account. On the one hand, we have the exchange of information about materials or events between independent catalogs based on tests. So the catalogs can automatically provide nominated content through a dedicated interface for metadata harvesting, which is then available in other catalogs. So we can distribute the knowledge or the materials through all these catalogs. And on the other hand, on the right side, the possibility of combining or pooling several different communities in one shared multi-tenanting test interface, which each community having its own view or space with its own subdomain layout, appearance, and logo, and so on. And also the community-specific content is selected from our overall database included in this main instance. So we can share the materials between the different communities, different views of this catalog between the different clusters, different members, and so on. Next slide, please. So MTSX will have an impact that significantly enhance the findability, accessibility, and reuse of high-quality training resources by the Federation of Interoperable Training Catalogs. With our strategy, we can improve sustainability and reduce operational duplication. With the planned improvements of the established catalogs, tests, and parent training, it will hopefully be possible to onboard further science clusters into our common catalog infrastructures of training materials by providing different community-specific views and interchangeability of content. Since tests and parent training are established catalogs that have already successfully survived initial funding, it can be expected that the MTSX approach will continue to be used as a sustainable product for various other science communities and clusters. Training consumers will have the availability of a much higher amount of fair training resources across all disciplines. So that was a very brief overview on our TESX project, and I thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much. Next, we have from the SSHOC related project, Matt Scatnet, Bernd Hinrichsen. So he's the co-founder of the Momentum Transfer venture of Chemovator GmbH. He has over a decade of experience in research on solid-state materials. Structure elucidation is his key interest, from the atomic scale through nano to microstructures. Understanding structure is key to improving properties. He works on materials covering catalysts, battery materials, active pharmaceutical ingredients, active ingredients for agricultural products, feed additives, polymers, pigments, and coatings. So Bernd, you may start your presentation.
Thanks a million, Rob. Great to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. And let's dive into MathSCAT.net. Let's go right to the next slide, please. So what we're building is a database for photon research experiments. We are working together with the ESRF, the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility, the most brilliant X-ray source for material science currently available in the world. We have built up an experiment which is quite fundamental to the description of materials, which is called X-ray powder diffraction, and we've made this into a real data producing machine, because we can measure thousands of materials in a shift, which is an 8-hour time shift with which is made available at these beamlines. So what our goal is with MathSCAT.net is to build an experimental database of materials data, which can be used later by scientists to analyze their own materials. Yeah, there are no open science databases like these available, and I have thought that this was a great shame ever since I've been working in this field, because it is so important for people analyzing or looking at materials to understand what they're actually looking at. And one fundamental step right at the beginning of the analysis of materials is to identify the material and to understand what type of crystal structure and then further what type of microstructure this material does contain. And this is what we're going to make available for the first time in a fair and open science compliant manner. The goal is great. The steps that we have to go through are also relatively clear. So we have started out with a marketing campaign to find collaborators with samples, because we plan to fill this database with thousands of sample data sets. And to do that, we have to create a great pool of collaborators that provide us with these samples. Our next step is to build the platform for the metadata input of these samples, because this is the salt in the soup, as we say in German. The metadata going together with the experimental data that we will provide with our infrastructure. Then, of course, collecting the samples and the data is a simple part that we've quite built up a great expertise in. And then creating a user interface with interaction capabilities within this database is another part that we're going to be building in the scope of this project. The final step will be connecting it up with EOC infrastructure to make it available in a really fair and also accessible manner. And the impact, personally, seeing I'm a material scientist and come out of the field, I can't highlight strongly enough, because enabling everybody to access an open database and understand the materials that they're working with is quite fundamental. Please, next slide. So the context, as I mentioned, we want to fill out this database with thousands of sample, thousands of sets of experimental data from these samples, using the setup that we've developed together with the ESRF, build the database, put in some tools to be able to use this data usefully with own experimental results, and make this available to the community. Next slide, please. The challenges that we have that we are addressing with this is to deal or make an easy and affordable access to understanding powder diffraction data, which are collected at thousands of places around the globe every year. We have expensive reference databases that are available. However, none are accessible in an open science and fair mode. And we're going to provide tools to identify these materials, which are typically currently only built into proprietary software. The next slide, please. What this is going to offer is the ability to compare own data against these high quality powder diffraction data sets that we are going to fill the database with, and it will also allow, for example, very similar but different, or comparison to very similar but different materials. For example, carbons. Yeah, you get it all from extremely well-ordered graphite samples to completely disordered glossy carbon materials, and to be able to understand which type of material you have in front of you will be part of this project. Next slide, please. So with that, we're going to enable material scientists and to be faster in their research, to identify their materials better, to understand their materials better. We will be creating new services for researchers with this project. And we will be able to create generally applicable tools for all sorts of particle diffraction questions, not only including the traditional crystalline materials, but also disordered materials that are only accessible using a novel method called total scattering and pair distribution function analysis. We will be curating the database as an extended part of the service that we provide to the community, as we have our main focus on providing low-cost synchrotron particle diffraction measurements as momentum transfer. This will be an additional service that we will offer not only to our customers but also to the broad community by curating this database in the future. With that, let's come to the next slide, which I think will be my final thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you very much to OSCARS for funding this project.
Thank you, Bernd. I just wanted to correct that MathScatNet is not related to SSHOC, but rather PaNOSC, the PaNOSC cluster. Now, we go into ParlaCap. So this is a SSHOC-related project. We will be hearing from Nikola Ljubesic, who is a senior researcher from the Josef Stefan Institute of Slovenia. He's also affiliated with the Faculty of Computer and Information Science of the University of Ljubljana and the Institute of Contemporary History of Slovenia. His research interests lie in the areas of natural language processing, computational linguistics, and computational social science, with a strong focus on the South Slavic linguistic and cultural area. So, Nikola, you may now begin your presentation.
Thank you very much. So I think we can move right away to the next slide, please. So the main aim of our project is to enable the analysis of more than 8 million of speeches of European national parliaments that are currently available in the open science area, and we will ensure that by using natural language processing techniques. So we have been awarded the maximum amount of 250,000 euros for 2 years, and we are primarily combining 2 research areas here. On one side, computational linguistics or natural language processing, and political science on the other side. We are a rather diverse consortium that also covers digital humanities, software development, etc. So for the steps of our projects, we start actually with an already existing fair open science dataset called Parliament, which we then further enrich in an automatic way and extend its metadata. We have also planned to do some data analysis by ourselves, but what is even more important, we will be releasing data in multiple flavors to ensure the uptake of the data, and of course the release will be in a fair, open way. And the impact that we expect from our project is, on one side, a better understanding of how parliaments in Europe work. On the other side, ensure much better availability of research data in political science, but also other areas interested in parliamentary data. Next slide, please. So, for the context, the Parliament dataset is an upstream open science project which ensured the availability of parliamentary transcripts of 29 European parliaments that you can see on the right side on the map. The whole dataset comprises of the staggering 1.2 billion words that have been written in 29 languages. So this is great data for linguistic research and for people who know how to deal with language data. However, most other disciplines cannot handle such amount of multilinguality and amount of data. Next, please. This is why we propose to follow the political science text data paradigm, where actually each text is being transformed into specific variables. In the realm of this project, we'll be encoding each speech by the topic it's discussing and the sentiment that has been expressed while doing so. To perform this automatic enrichment of data, we will have to do topic and sentiment classification in 29 different languages and in a highly accurate manner. And this will be all possible due to the recent developments in natural language processing. You're probably guessing large language models, right? And we will be releasing the data as tabular data sets, so as databases that political scientists prefer through the Croatian node of the CESDA ERIC social science infrastructure. And we will also follow further on releasing it as a linguistic corpus to the humanities and social science language-related Clarin ERIC infrastructure through the Slovenian node Clarin SI. We'll also enable access to a subset of these millions and millions of speeches, because most researchers are actually interested in subsets of this data, not in the dataset itself, which is rather huge. So we will develop APIs and web user interfaces for that. Next slide, please. And the main impact that we actually expect is opening the Parliament dataset, which now has been mostly available for linguistic research, also to social science researchers, but also other disciplines that are not keen or able to work with this amount of textual data. We will also perform specific research. We will focus on political focus and its shift throughout European parliaments and its dependence on the state of various democracies, the political leaning of specific speakers, as well as the negativity expressed. We have also envisioned a series of workshops and tutorials to ensure the uptake of the data sets that we will be providing. With that, I think I can say thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have from PNU Open Lab. This is a project that has been funded, not specifically related to the science clusters that have been discussed previously. So we will hear from Volodymyr Kotsiubinsky. He's a researcher at the Vasil Stefanik Precarpathian National University. He has over 20 years experience working as a university lecturer, physicist, and expert in obtaining characterization of new materials under Ukrainian international research projects. He is a PhD, Doctor of Science in Physics and Chemistry of Surface, Material Science, and Nanotechnology. He has experience as a manager of international projects in energy-efficient new materials. Today, his activities are focused on providing access to research infrastructures for scientists and manufacturers, as well as the implementation of open science and fair practices in Ukraine. Volodymyr, you may begin.
Thank you very much, Rob, for a great presentation. Let's start. PNU is the classical university, but our priority is to conduct research in the natural sciences. Material science is the cornerstone of technological progress, influencing nearly every aspect of modern life. Open science is crucial for driving innovation, especially in the field like material science, where the collaboration, transparency, and accessibility are vital. The next, thank you. What are the main challenges facing open science in Ukraine today? First, insufficient awareness and training. Also, our legal and policy is under development today. Despite what time, Ukraine has made the first step toward open science by approving the National Open Science Plan, like a roadmap. However, and the best plans must be implemented in practice. We are still developing our digital infrastructure. Ukraine lacks institutional repositories, data storage facilities, and national platforms for open access publications. Also, we have some cultural restrictions. The academic evaluation system in Ukraine is still based on the traditional metrics and not not on open access publishing and data sharing. Another challenges are a lack of support of young researchers, and also we have problems with access to research infrastructure. The next slide, please. Next slide. PNU Open Lab cannot solve all these issues, but we will contribute to systematic progress. PNU Open Lab becomes a superstructural facility for universities' research ecosystem. For example, for PNU Nano Lab, technology lab for material science, energy, and medicine. Our key initiatives include creating thematic and venue-driven repository for multidisciplinary open access research data focused on the advanced materials. Also providing open access to research infrastructure. Offering certified services to industry in the field of material characterization. It's really important today for Ukraine's defense capabilities and critical infrastructure. The next, please, slide. Next. This is the main predicted impact of PNU Open Lab is the consolidation of Ukrainian university research in obtaining, characterizing, and implementing advanced materials and nanomaterials according to open science principles. This is the project timeline, and we are here today. The following key milestones will be achieved. Launching the PNU Open Lab portal with integrated ENVRI driver repository, providing open access to university research facilities, certifying of PNU NanoLab, preparing for creation of THERIC regional node, disseminating of open science practices among the Ukrainian scientific community, and also conducting of core analysis to evaluate the implementation of open science and FAIR principles in Ukraine. Next slide, please. There are a lot of expected results, but in our opinion, above all, the primary expected result is to promote the integration of Ukrainian scientists into the European research area. Next one. Yes, and the next one. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to become part of such a great community. Thank you, OSCARS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will head to the Q&A and the Slido section. So we don't have all the time in the world, and we have a lot of questions to go through. But before that, I want to just recognize who will be joining us aside from the speakers that have already spoken previously. For the Life Sciences Cluster, LSRI, we have Jonathan Tedds from Elixir, Jonathan Eubank and Roman David from Erinia, and Gary Saunders from ITRIS. For the Environmental Science Cluster, ENVRI, we have Andreas Petzold from FC Jülich and Anka Hienola from FMI. For the Astronomy, Nuclear and Particle Physics Cluster, we have from ESCAPE, Giovanni Lamanna from CNRS Lab as well. For the Photon and Neutron Science Cluster, PaNOSC, we have Andy Goetz from ESRF and Patrick Furman from DESI. For the Social Sciences and Humanities Cluster, SSHOC, we have Daria Fischer from Claren Eric, Bonnie Wolf-Bunisch from CESDA. We're also joined by some colleagues from Trust IT who can respond or handle questions regarding the grants platform. Now, we will take the questions based on the number of votes that are on top there. So, and I also, Andy is not present, so Jordi is also joining us to answer on his behalf. So we have now the questions up on the screen. Again, I remind you to please concentrate your questions into the Slido. We'll select them based on the number of votes. Also, if yours is one of the more popular questions, if you feel that you'd like to clarify a bit more, or if you'd like to have a follow-up question, if you feel that the answer wasn't clear, please do raise your hand immediately so that we can provide you the floor. So we have the first question from Manuel Lara Ramirez. The budget is limited per organization. 2 unrelated groups in the same organization may apply. Does this propagate to all institutions involved in an application? So who among the panelists would like to answer?
Friederike? Yeah, I'm afraid that goes in my direction. And I need to say from the start, there are a lot of questions about exactly that point. The trouble is that's exactly the eligibility criteria. We are still waiting for legal advice, and that's the reason we had to delay the call in the first place. So I really can't answer that properly just now. It's simply not possible. We are still waiting for input from the EC. What I can say is the usual Horizon Europe limits apply and the usual Horizon Europe limits are set out in the model grant agreement, and it clearly says if there's funding provided for third-party organizations in the form we are having it here, the total amount of funding to one organization is the total amount maximum set out in the call, and in our case, that's 250,000. How they are going to apply, and that's exactly the point we are waiting for. What is one organization is exactly the point. Because obviously they're very different sized organizations. They're SMEs, it's very straightforward. If you have one project with one SME being involved, it's clear how much money they are getting. It's very much more complicated if it's organizations like CNRS or CNR in Italy, which has a multi-organizations, research institutes underneath, and we simply don't have the answer just now. So we can't answer that. We will be hopefully able to answer that once we got the legal advice and the call is open. So, but for the moment, I simply can't say. What is clear is we are going to rely on that organizations really checking that themselves. If they have already been involved in numerous projects which were funded in the first call, then yeah, they can't get more money in total than the 250,000. That's absolutely strict from the EC side.
Thank you.
I'm hoping
yes,
that's helpful, but we really can't properly answer that just now.
Okay, thank you. I also just wish to recognize the presence of Paul Miller, who will also be speaking on behalf of the PaNOSC cluster. Okay, next we go to the next top question. So we have this question: how do we get involved in the clusters? Found no direct method to connect with people from the clusters in our list of contact people. I think that's been sent, the links have been sent in the chat. I think I saw a couple of that there already. If someone from an organization secured 250K in the first call, this means no one else can apply in the second?
Yes, as I said, so but the term organization is what at the moment isn't quite clear, because there might be exemption. But yes, in general, yes. If you already received the full amount in the first call, you can't apply in the second.
Okay. Next question: is there a maximum number of proposals that can be submitted per institute?
Yeah, that's kind of connected. Or it really, the restriction is the budget, not the number of proposals.
Okay, next up, could you please also inform the participants of this webinar when the call for applications will be launched? Yes, I think we can confirm that. Normally, the process, once we have the call open, we inform via all our channels. That includes also via newsletter. Okay, next, will you provide a sample budget?
So as I said, so we are not really asking for a lot of details. So it comes, and the form in the proposal form is quite self-explaining, hopefully quite clear. It just asks for personal costs, the total of personal costs, the total of other costs, the overhead flat rate, and then it's calculating the total. That's all it is.
Okay. So what is an organization for the funding limit? Is this a university? Is a university one organization? Can I apply if someone from the same uni got the full amount in the first round? I guess.
Yeah, I think Andreas? I'm afraid that's the same question again. We can't really properly answer just now.
Andreas, you have a hand raised? Perhaps
yes, thank you. I'm referring to the question in the chat on how to contact the clusters and the complaint that this question has not been answered properly. So from the ENVRI cluster, I can say that we will provide contact details then on the website. And the main point, what we encourage people who plan to submit proposals in the environmental domain is that you have a look at our ENVRI hub on the website, on the EOSC. This is a collaboration platform of the environmental sciences, and our plan is that we will at the end link the open science projects and their products to the ENVRI hub as a platform for distribution. So if you want to get a feeling from environmental sciences, visit the ENVRI hub, then you get an idea of how the environmental infrastructures collaborate, and there you will also find the contact details where you can reach Anka and myself, or people at the hub, and these contacts can also be found on the OSCARS websites. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is more of a request for comment. It seems that the odds of succeeding in the second call are much worse than in the first call. Can you comment on that? And was that intentional?
So yes, it's true. It will be, because we had already distributed the majority of the funding in the first call. That wasn't intentional in that sense. It wasn't request from the Commission that we are putting 80% into the first call, 20 in the second call. And that's simply following now from that one. But it's not that it was meant to. I think the reason behind it was rather that they weren't quite sure that we are getting enough interest for the first call. But that clearly wasn't the case.
Okay. I see that the next two top questions are more related to this, or the next three top questions are really related to the specifics. Is it something that we can answer now, Friederike, or do we have to wait?
Can. So we are expecting you to come to the final meeting, and that means you should set aside travel budget in your budget. So for the work packages also, you don't need to know. And as I said, we really are only asking for the 3 deliverables at the very end, and that you engage with the OSCARS consortium. But there's no need to make a very complicated structure with work packages and deliverables and milestones.
Okay. Am I eligible for funding if another research group in my institute has already received funding? This is, I guess, still in discussion. Yes. Okay. Eligibility criteria for the second call different from the first one. I suppose so, but you'll see that once we have the final confirmation, I guess. So there is only 3 million available for the budget of the second call, Mark. Is that right?
Yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm. Next, is it acceptable to propose further development of an existing prototype for the OSCARS call, or is there a preference for entirely new tools?
I'm not sure to understand. Is it acceptable to propose further development of an existing prototype for the OSCARS call, or is the preference for entirely new tools? No, there is no preference. Then I think the PI should enter in the question of level of readiness of the service or the tool, in case the proposals is addressing the action for bringing up in level of readiness of the service, or in case he wants to produce something from scratch, but it is up to the PI to figure out to demonstrate the original character and the impact of this new tool by learning and reading and explaining what's the landscape.
Thank you. Next, we have, this has already been answered. Budget per project and per organization. Does this mean that the maximum amount, okay, I think that's already been answered, Friederike, right? So I guess we can move on to the next.
Maybe that has a slightly different context. So yes, the amount per project is 250,000. It doesn't matter how big the consortium is underneath, just to make that clear.
Okay. Okay, you explained how you score the proposals, but you didn't clarify how the final selection of the funded projects is made. So I think it's more on the procedure, I guess, of the selection. Can you explain how it works?
It's a normal procedure. We have reviewers. We rank based on the marks for the different criteria. We do not make any priority repartition among domains. The domains are not in competition among them. It's the quality of the proposal, the impact of the proposal, the correspondence to the criteria. And then we try to find let's say the level of diversity that is expected by the Commission through this action. At the end, the highest ranked project also reflect the diversity because of the number of proposals. So it's just based mainly on the values, the evaluations.
Okay, there's I see luckily I managed to spot this follow-up related to this, contrarily to what is being explained. Now I know for sure that the selection did not correlate with the scores in the first call. I think it's a follow-up directly to your response, Giovanni. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that. Otherwise, we can proceed.
I think we said the large institutes can be considered differently because of the pending advice from the Commission. Will soon report all in details the answers to all these questions with the final statement from the Commission.
Thank you. Okay, in the case of CSIC, there are several institutes. 250K applies to the whole institution, so that's more of a question.
They're the same.
Okay. Next, are costs of permanent staff eligible as for other Horizon EU projects?
Yes, that they are eligible. That's the same rules as for Horizon Europe in general.
Okay. Well, the next top question, how do you know if others in your organization are applying or if other proposals will be accepted or not? Difficult to plan the budget.
Yeah, I think you can't plan obviously on which one is funded or not. So my advice would be if you think you have a strong proposal, and even if you know someone else from your institute is applying as well, I would go ahead because yeah, both of you have a chance to end up being funded or not. Yeah. But clearly you can do an assessment internally and say, okay, we are only putting one forward, but that's up to you.
Okay, I just wanted to recognize that we're running slightly over time and we still have 83 questions. How many minutes can we extend, do you think, Friederike, before we have to officially close the webinar and just provide the answers? Maybe we can commit to a date when we would publish some of the answers to the questions on the website.
Yeah, I think so. So what we can't, I don't know how about the other panel members, but maybe we can extend another 5 minutes, and then the rest of the questions we are just taking away and try to answer them and then distribute the answers to all participants. I'm not sure I can now say exactly how much time will take because it's a lot of questions, and
yeah. Let's all right. Let's try to do some lightning answers for these next 5 minutes. Okay, is resubmission encouraged? And if so, is the evaluation redone? Will the reviewers be the same? More of an advice there.
Well, strictly speaking, we can't encourage anything. We encourage everybody. So we can still open.
Okay.
Just keep in mind that if an application was rejected, maybe you need to do some changes to improve it for the next time. So that's all.
And we will look at the reviewers, right? We will probably allocate different reviewers.
Okay. Thank you for that insight. The projects can have supporting partners that are not funded but support the activities or the action in case of a letter of interest is enough.
Sure.
Okay. How many proposals were rejected from the first round, and are all of these institutions eligible to resubmit?
So you can do the calculations. We had 264 proposals and we funded 58. So the difference is has been rejected. The institutions who didn't get any funding, sure, they're eligible again.
I would like to come to the term, the verb used, reject. We did not reject all the proposals, all the projects were evaluated, actually. That was a ranking.
Thank you. Are lower budget projects prioritized?
There is not this kind of, there was not this kind of approach during the first call.
Okay. Are hardware costs eligible? So I guess this is in the eligibility.
So in theory, you know, hardware costs are eligible in Horizon Europe, but it's investment costs, so which means you can't claim the full costs when you're buying it. So you have to use the yearly costs to count that down. So for a 1 or 2 year project, most of the time, that doesn't really make sense. But in theory, it's possible, yes.
Okay.
Rob, allow me to answer because I see 3 questions about the calls, the 3 million available for this call, the man used for the management. Let's clarify the things. We already provided these informations during the same exercise than today, the launch of the first call. We clearly said that the budget would not be split in 2 halves, but the majority of the budget was in the first round, the first call. And this was not a choice, but a recommendation from the Commission that would say positively today after the outcome, where was not probably expecting such a success and this popularity. Therefore, there is not a possibility of extension of the current grants for instructing further calls for further grants. But it is right, we are discussing the important scientific value of such an instrument of the cascading grant with these terms to be considered also for the future, the midterm during the built-up phase of the federation, of EOSC Federation. Then as I presented in today, this morning, no, the allocated budget for the cascading grant was 16 million, but the total amount, the remaining total amount, the 9 million, was not dedicated to management. There is a part, obviously, for the management, but there is the consolidation part. So the consortium, the OSCARS consortium, had also activities in progress in parallel with the complement to 25 for distributed and organized around 3 technical work packages. Therefore, you must see the 16 as the pure funding for the cascading grant. The rest was for other technical works conducted by the clusters.
Thank you, Giovanni. Last here, and maybe it might be good to, unfortunately, we only have time to respond to this last one. So 5 out of 5 presentations were by men. Is it a message for women who might consider participating? So maybe it'd be good to comment on how the presentations today were selected for the funded projects.
Is it a message for women who might consider participating? The message is there is no distinction. We don't make any positive discrimination. It was not our intent to discriminate by the fact that gentlemen were PI of these sorted out 6 projects. Probably we neglected the sensitivity of all of you, and we would have been better by considering probably some women colleagues in presenting the projects. We just sorted out projects by domains to demonstrate the diversity in scientific research. But I would guarantee that there is the clear pro rata diversity that we have among the applicants through the retained and funded projects.
Thank you, Giovanni. Now, before we close, any other comments from the rest before we close today? Unfortunately, we don't have any more time to go through the rest, but as we indicated earlier, we will publish the answers to these later on. Okay. If there are no further questions or rather comments from the panelists, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to your applications as soon as the call opens. Thank you all.
Thank you for everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.